What's up, coders?
What's up?
Dan here doing another interview with another member of the CodeX team. This time it is, wrong way, Wes, the Rebel Scum. So thank you for sitting down and taking your turn in the firing line for this.
I know. I'm nervous. Now, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. So, I'm going to jump in and start with the same question to you that I started with everyone. So, what was it that first got you interested in comics?
Oh, was that the first question? Oh God. When I first let's see, that would have to be my dad. My dad, whenever I'd go over to his house and hang out and things like that, he had like a box of like old stuff of his. And in there was like a stack of old comics, mostly like Sergeant Rocks. And he had a few of the big titles like X-Men, and he had a couple Green Lanterns, all from the 60s, Silver Age stuff, every bit of it.
I know you've shown off some of those X-Men before.
Yeah, I've shown them off. They're not near me now, but yeah, I've shown off those before. I have two of those that I've gotten graded since then. Those are really the only two that were really not falling apart, unfortunately, but they were gradable, and they're. But anyways, so that's kind of where I started when I was first introduced to comic books. And he would talk to me about them a little bit and tell me how, he used to have this, he used to have that, until my grandmother, his mom, I guess one day threw most of them out whenever he left for Vietnam. And I'm like, oh my God, he used to tell me what all he had. He had like the first Fantastic Four. According to him, he had the first Spider-Man. He had all that stuff. So this little tiny box that had maybe 25 comics left in it, most were nothing burger, right? And that was my first introduction to them. And then again, my dad, one day we were driving and we stopped at a gas station, and I went in because I wanted to get a drink, and I was probably 9 or 10. And up at the front register, there was these little packs of Marvel and DC trading cards. And I picked up a pack of those, and he bought me a pack of it. And I remember going through it going, cool. I could read about the characters. And that, from there, was actually truly born my my collecting, really, or comic book life, if you want to call it that. I actually began by mostly reading collecting the trading cards. The Marvel series, I believe it was series 3, was the first one that I really was after, like, for the longest time. I mean, there were other series, but that was the one that I really remember collecting first. I remember studying the back of those cards. I mean, studying them. Like, to this day, I still remember the power levels of certain characters based on what that card said, and wondering, why is Hulk only a 6, or not Hulk? Why is the Thing only a 6 in strength, but the Hulk is a 7? Well, obviously, but at the time, I'm like, I thought he was just as strong. Well, you can learn a lot through those cards, and eventually, I just learned all about these characters, and like, oh my gosh, and thinking some of these guys are like super cool in the artwork, and then I collected the X-Men one that was soon after that, and I ended up having like 5 or 6 sets of these things. I can't remember what all the series were. And then finally, the very first time I actually bought my own comic book was I was actually with my grandmother at a flea market, or a antique store, and there was a box of comics there, and I remember pulling out a comic book, and it was the Fantastic Four 358, and which is like a 70 or 80 page book. It was the one that has the big circle in it, and it's like an 80 pager.
Oh yeah.
It's like, it is actually a minor key, believe it or not. It's like the first Super Scroll or something, and that kind of began my love affair of like the Fantastic Four, because I probably read that book 25 times. I mean, and it was like Gary's not omnibus
Justice
book.
League.
Yeah, like his Justice League book. I mean, it was just falling apart by the time he was done with it. Same with mine. I've still got it. I've got other copies now that are nice, but though I've still got my one there, and that is my Genesis book, and it's 100%. And in the back, the best part about that book, I remember, and not unlike the cards I had been collecting, there were pages in there in towards the back, and one page would be dedicated to Mr. Fantastic, and it would show all the cool things he could do. And then the next page would be, it was just talk. And then there was a letter from Stan Lee in it, all kinds of cool stuff. But that kind of began my journey with comics.
Yeah, so that's cool how you have that memory of your dad that got you started, and then you went into it on your own. What was it? So you said it was the Fantastic Four book that was the first one that you got for yourself.
Yeah.
What was the first series that you started, if you remember, that you started actively reading like new issues of as it was coming out?
So this is going to sound really dumb. So obviously, yeah, it's ridiculous. It's a terrible story. The series that I decided to first collect 1 through whatever. Now I had picked up a ton of the Fantastic Four by this point. I was reading as much as I could on it, and things like that. But I never considered myself a run collector. You're right. I would pick up 2, 3, 4 of them, read them. That's cool. 2 or 3 more, maybe a couple back here. They were never in real numerical order in the way I picked them up. The very first series that I ever picked up in numerical order, I was working at a grocery store. And of course, they had a little spinner rack newsstand, right? Like they did back then. And I started collecting Doom 2099.
Hey, that was hot.
It was a great. That number 1 was so shiny and cool and neat.
Such a great cover.
Yeah, great cover. The story was just kind of droned on a little bit. And I desperately wanted to be that guy that was, reading them month to month to month to month.
Yeah.
So I did. I mean, up until I think I ended up stopping like in the 30s because I just, maybe went on to other things or, started whatever. But I collected the heck out of those things. And every month I'd be like, where's the next issue? Where's the next issue? Okay, cool. The story was okay. It was all right. It was not anything to write home about. But that was the very first one I remember collecting, starting from number 1 up until, I petered out, I guess is the best word to say it on that. I petered out on that run, I guess I should say. And it was pretty cool. The 2099 series were really neat. And it was kind of a change of what everybody was kind of used to back then when all those 2099 issues came out, Ravage and Ghost Rider and Spider-Man and Doom and
X-Men.
X-Men
was the one that
X-Men. Now the X-Men, some of those were really good reads.
I love the art, Ron Lim's artwork on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the artwork was always fine, mostly.
Yeah,
and it was just that particular storyline. The Doom one wasn't awesome. It was okay. I didn't pick a great one to, just decide to, whatever. That was the first one I remember collecting from 1 going forward. It's weird that happened to be the one. Maybe it was that cool cover that I saw.
That is such a great cover.
Yeah, that's probably what it was. It's a cool cover. It's a really cool cover.
And Ravage 29, that was the last character that Stan Lee created for Marvel.
Was it? I had no idea. I had no idea.
Yep, that was the last one.
You're full of so many, and that's why whenever we do this trivia game show one day, everybody thinks that Gary's just going to walk away with it. I completely disagree. Now, don't get me wrong. He's got his. I mean, he's full of great knowledge. But you have that same stuff, dude. So it's gonna be
Gary will top me because Gary remembers individual issue numbers much better than I do.
Well, it all depends on the layout of the game we do and the questions that you get. I'm currently creating an outline, and I was going to send it to everybody and see what they thought, but that's another topic for another day. So, anyways,
that, ladies and gentlemen, It's called a tease.
That's right. That's right. It's going to happen.
So that's for that's going to be something that you want to subscribe to.
Heck yeah.
That's who's going to see it. But anyways, back to this. So you were fantastically in love with Doom 2099.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what was it that made you go from being a casual comic reader to, I'm going to pick up some issues here and there. Oh, these back issues I get here there. What is it that made you go from being a comic reader to a comic collector? Because it's definitely two different things between someone that's just like, oh, I like to read and whatever, and someone's like, no, I collect them.
Absolutely.
I must have them all.
So, like I said, I'd been collecting the heck out of those cards, and I was at the YMCA hanging out with some friends, and a friend of a friend had brought his binder of cards. And like, oh, dude, I have those too, And he's like, really? And so that really and that group of friends whom I'm friends with, most of them to this day. I don't see them much because they're still, back home and everything. But
the cowboy and the police officer and the what were the other ones?
Yeah, the
Indian.
Yeah. But I'm friends with those guys still. But it was really it was a random set of friends that I had that randomly also were kind of into that stuff. And then we started collecting the cards together, buying comic books together a little bit, going to comic book stores. There was one in my town. Unfortunately, it's not there anymore, but it was a great place to go. It was like, and we would leave school and we would walk to the comic book store, which was only a block and a half away, which was perfect location. I mean, we could be there in 5 minutes on foot. And we'd go there every day and spend our money and hang out, buy more cards and buy a couple comic books and hang out and talk comics. And of course we would, hang out and do that stuff. And it was really the friends that I had, they were doing it. So we it kind of morphed into each other, pushing each other to kind of do it. And then there came the love, right? There was the real, ooh, I've got this too. It was no different than collecting and trading baseball cards, because we would pick up an issue here, or somebody would find a stack of them here of their dad's old ones, and we would do trades, and it was kind of the same thing, except for and the same thing with the the Marvel cards and things like that. We were always searching for those holograms or those special.
Yeah, you're sitting there, you're like the Impel ones, you're like, oh, I got this Captain America, but I need the one with him on the motorcycle. Like,
right.
Or the ones like, I've got the patch Wolverine, but I don't have this Wolverine.
And eventually you have all the commons, and all you're doing is buying these packs so that you can find that one holo that you're missing out of the 6 or something. And you're like, damn it. And you're just spending all this money. But yeah, it was really the group of friends that I was with just happened to kind of be into it too. And then we pushed each other, and then most of us became collectors of nerd stuff, not just comics, just nerd things. And that was really cool. And that really was fun. And this was probably when I was in my early teens, like middle school, and then into high school a little bit for sure. Actually a lot in high school. But yeah, that was kind of where that began.
So early, one of the questions I always ask is everybody, like, when it was it that you went from just collecting comics to like, oh, there's all this other stuff, the posters, the cards, the toys, all that. So it was pretty early on that you branched off into like, oh, there's all this other stuff I can get to. Oh, they have action figures and statues and prints and posters, like all this other stuff that goes along with the comics.
Yeah. And that all came from, that interest came from both my dad, and because he was always into old vintage things and toys. He owned a toy store at one time, before I was born, or right during the time I was born. Walmart ended up closing him down, but as they did with a lot of places. But he had a lot of those left over, like just toys. I've got a Dan, or was it Don Post did all those helmets? Is it Don Post Studios? I've got a couple things from his store still And he had like a full size replica of Darth Vader's helmet, and
Oh, no, yeah, I remember.
which I
I
have, and
remember.
that's from 1977. And it's in the box
Nice.
still. And
Wow.
yeah, I was actually going to put it back there, and I was like, I don't want it to be out. My son will come back here and start messing with it. But anyways,
Within box, don't touch it.
yeah, don't touch it. But
Don't even look at it.
yeah, so that became my appreciation for that thing. And then I was speaking to that group of friends. Well, one of my friends was, gosh, I guess he was 2 years older than we were. And he was like big into that stuff. So he was like the catalyst that really started making me go, oh, this stuff is cool and nostalgia's fun. And, I loved going to antique stores anyways with my mom and my grandmother. And it was just kind of a natural transition for me to go from collecting comic books to just simply collecting things. And I collected everything from rocks to comic books to I had 3 giant totes full of old lunch boxes up until it just collecting things, the old GI, like the stuff that I would buy things and not open them, and that was unheard of for kids back in the 80s and
Oh
90s.
yeah.
Like, no, you play with that stuff. Like, well, yeah, I'll play with it if I've got 2 of them. But if I only have one, it's staying in the pack there. I've still got a lot of that stuff. I mean, not a ton of it anymore. Unfortunately, my dumb 20s, I, would put things out in yard sales like an idiot, and I regret that. But
I had a copy of Amazing Spider-Man 129
oh,
signed by Jerry Conway that I got off of eBay for like $100 before the Punisher movie came out, the Thomas Jane one. After I was like, oh, this is going to go up in value. Even then, I was like, this is going to go up in value when that movie comes out. Sold it after the movie came out for like 20 or $30 more, and I was like, oh yeah, made a profit. I look back at it now, like, God damn it, you'll never find that book again. You'll find it, but you'll never afford that again.
Never. Not unless you do something like come across it in a collection, and and that's how I've got most of my big books. I won't pay. I do my best not to pay full retail for things. I love buying and finding things in collections. It's so fun, and that's the thrill of the hunt too. And that's what I enjoy about collecting. Period. It's the thrill of the hunt, and so that was always kind of a big thing for me.
So as a reader,
129. God, oh, you just broke my heart, man.
You break my heart because that's the biggest book I've ever owned, and I'm like, but at the time, and it was probably 10 years before that, before the stuff really blew up into the value that it was.
There's no way you could have known. There's no way.
Yeah, it's not like it was just 6 months later that oh, it's tens of thousands of dollars now. Like, it was years and years and years went by.
Yeah. There's no way you could have known.
Yeah, but so as a reader, as a collector, what was the first full run that you completed?
Well, I don't have a full run of anything yet. I do have big chunks of runs. Well, no, that's not true. I've got like mini series and stuff. The first one that I have a major chunk of that really would be the Fantastic Four, except for like I don't have it complete, but that's the one that I've been working on forever. Those are the books that I always kept. Those are the books that I was really always drawn to because that was Dad's favorite, I guess. And that's probably why I was drawn to that. Plus, that was my first book I bought. And so I was just naturally inclined to collect those. I don't have any full runs because if you remember, I've only kind of been back into collecting now for, I guess it's only about 4 years now, because a lot of my stuff did not survive what I call the mom effect. When I graduated high school, I joined the military and I was gone for 5 years. And then when I got out, I found work not home, like in a completely different state, which is where I live now. And, my mom was always like, you need to come get your stuff. And I was like, I know. Yeah, I'll get to it. Well, turns out I should have because, 3/4 of my comics were gone. And I'm like, where'd they go? And she goes, well, I gave them to such and such. I didn't. I'm like, God, it wasn't anything that she was doing malicious. It was just like, oh, it's just, these are his funnies. Right. And, she didn't think anything of it. Just like my dad's mom did, and that's what I call the mom effect. And they didn't mean to do that. They didn't know what they were doing. So I had to start completely. Well, so I took like a 20-year hiatus almost. And not really, it was probably 17-year hiatus. And I'm only kind of getting back into it. And the stuff that I have now is kind of what I've just picked up over the last 3 or 4 years. So I don't have any full runs anymore, but what did survive were all my Fantastic Four. And I have filled in a lot of gaps there and a lot of blanks. I'm missing a lot of the early Silver Age, most of them, actually, most of the double digits, other than a few. So as far as runs are concerned, I don't have an impressive answer like you guys do. And my collecting became more pinpointed and deliberate, where, there's some runs I'm going to work on because I love them. And, I'm working on a Green Lantern run. That's really the only DC character I ever really liked. I like more now, but growing up, that was really the only one I thought was cool. The other ones are like, Marvel rules, DC rules. And now I've opened my mind more to where that's not necessarily the case, but I was a Marvel thumper, as Jamie would say. So the runs are few and far between for sure. I've got, mini series and stuff, but that doesn't really count. So really none is the answer.
Well, I mean, you say, like all of us with our runs, obviously Gary has epic, runs with the complete runs of X-Men and Fantastic Four and Justice League and Spider-Man and Daredevil. Like, the complete runs I have is not quite as impressive. It's like West Coast Avengers, New Warriors, Guardians of the Galaxy, like the original one, not the modern one.
I do have New Mutants 1 through like 100. I've got that cool. What's that one? That magazine I showed you. I'm forgetting the name. It's the one where it's actually their first true appearance.
Yeah. Well, that's a complete run because New Mutants only ran 100 issues.
It's like maybe I'm missing a couple. I'll have to go look on my cover price, but I'm missing a few.
I'm missing
1 through 100.
I'm missing 3 for that. I need issue 98, the big one,
of course,
and then I need the second and third print of issue 100, which I used to have.
See, I didn't do any of the second and third print stuff. I mean, I guess, of course, that one. Yeah, I didn't even really bother doing that. With that,
the only reason I'm counting that is because there's the second print, the gold cover for 87, the first Cable.
With Cable,
and the second and third print for 100. And that's it. It's not like now where it's like, oh, there's 5th and 6th and 7th printings and all these alternate covers. Like, no, it wasn't like that back then. So that's the only reason I count them, because the second and third print for that book I could get them anytime I want. I'm probably going to try and find them at Baltimore Comic Con this year because they're cheap books. They're not worth it.
They're not. They're not, but they're easy to find. But and when they're easy to find, it's now you can afford to be picky and like, oh no, only crisp, clean copies for me, and that's because you're going to run across them anytime. So it takes a little more time, but there it is. The Amazing Heroes. That's the one.
Yep. I need to get a copy of that. My buddy's got that too.
Yeah. I'm still debating on whether or not to get that graded or not. I probably won't. I think I'll keep that raw. It's nice though.
You know what? He might be at Baltimore Comic Con. McLeod. He was there last year. You always get him.
If I'm not able to make it, maybe I'll send it with Tim and see what he can do.
Claremont was there last year too. He might be there again.
That'd be a cool one to get signed.
Because they had offered Bob. I did, for everyone out there, I did an interview with Bob McLeod. You can check it out on here too. And he told me that they offered him either the X-Men or that, and he picked that because even though he knew X-Men was the big seller and a lot of money, he wanted to have a hand in actually
something new and something organic, right?
Yeah,
I don't blame him. And also the X-Men thing, there'd been a ton of pressure. You know what I mean? Yeah. Can you imagine the pressure of taking on that book?
Yeah, I mean,
that would be tantamount to doing ASM. I mean, it's like that would just be it'd be It'd be tough taking over.
And even though he co-created New Mutants, he wasn't on there long because he couldn't keep up with the grind of doing a monthly book.
Right.
But yeah, so you're close on that. But yeah, I don't buy these issues off of eBay generally or any of these other spots online that are so cheap because yeah, they're easy to get, but it's like if I'm paying $5 for this $5 book, then I got to pay another $5 for shipping. Like, if I do it, it's either got to be a more valuable book that I'm getting a really good deal on, or if I'm buying something that's like a cheap issue, it's got to be a couple of them to kind of negate that shipping cost.
Yeah. And that's the thing with those books, like you said, they're easy to find. So you can take your time. There's no pressure. It's not like if you don't buy that one, oh, I might not see that one again in a year. No, you can easily find those in dollar bins or at cons and
and that's
$2-3 bins, antique stores, just anywhere, yard sale. They're going to be everywhere.
Yeah. And that's the thing too with buying stuff online now. There's so easy. There's so many venues to buy stuff now, but there's still nothing like the thrill of the hunt, like digging through boxes and finding that book. Like, I've been searching for this for so long, and I've got it here in my hands now.
Dude, there's nothing like it. And I know you've done that, and that was originally I started buying these collections because I didn't want to spend the money to buy these big books, but I wanted the big books. I wanted that New Mutants 98. I did not buy that book. I used it. I traded for it with things that I had almost nothing in, and it's graded at an 8.5. It's not the best, but it's awesome. And it's mine and I'll never get rid of it. That right there, which, that right there is that Ghostbusters that was found in that last collection. Mm-hmm. And that's an incentive variant. If I wanted that book, I would have to spend $600 for it. It's like, no. Whereas I can go buy these collections and it's just, but that thrill of the hunt, dude, there's nothing like buying these collections and going through it and pulling out that first appearance of New Mutants and going, oh my God, I didn't even see that in, and it's so fun. It's so cool. I don't deserve these books because I haven't put in, I really don't. I'm, and I've told Tim this, I think I've told you that I don't deserve to have the books that I have because I haven't put in the legwork that you guys have. Again, I've only been doing this again for the last 3 or 4 years. I just chose a weird route to do it, or a weird way to do it, in where I'm going to spend a lot of money on a collection, but by God, I'm going to find some stuff in there that's going to blow my mind. And that's so fun to me because I have turned the collecting into it's almost become an event for me, like a it's not just, ooh, I need that book and I pull it out of the dollar bin, which I do, but it's become more of a game that I play with myself, like what can I find in this collection now where I can go try to save up for that New Mutants 98 and pay $300-400 for a really nice copy, or I could not do that. And then maybe someday I'll find it in a collection and and that's just what and now it's going to take me forever to find these things, but eventually, I've got that X-Men number or that Iron Man #1 that I never thought I would own. Yeah, that I randomly came across in a collection. So sometimes you're going to find these things, and you and I have talked back and forth a little bit about the collection buying and kind of where to go and how to do it, and it's fun. You can strike out, there's no doubt, but it's fun. It's fun.
All right. So you talked about you graduated high school, you went off to the military, left comics behind, and that it was a long time before you came back to it. So what was it that brought you back into being interested in comics again?
The movies, 100%. I know that sounds so cliche and so ridiculous, and I sound like even more of a poser than people already think I am. But it really was.
I don't think anybody thinks you're a poser.
Well, maybe I feel like I am sometimes, but when they started coming out, I was like, oh my God, that's right. I remember that. And, little hints they would drop. I'm like, ooh, I bet it's going to be Infinity Gauntlet. or I think it's going to be this, and then I started thinking, oh, I've got a box somewhere. Let me go dig that out. And I went through the box, and then I went down the rabbit hole on YouTube, watching all these other, comic book YouTube channels. And, one of the ones I sort of gravitated to was Mint Hunter Comics, who is big into grading, right? Which might be where I started getting the grading bug. There was a few others, Bronze and Modern Gods. I love them. They're awesome. A bunch of cool guys on there. And that's where I kind of got back into it. It was Iron Man, and with Robert Downey Jr. And I thought, oh, cool. And they did such a good job on these things, and it just kind of got me back into it. And it reminded me that, oh yeah, I've got all this cool stuff. Let me go appreciate it again. Yeah. Instead of it just sitting in a box and collecting dust and getting damaged because it's in the attic, so and that was kind of where that began. Tale as old as time, I guess, with a lot of people. I guess it was kind of the same way, and I'm one of them. Though I had a history with it prior, so that, makes me a little different than the newcomers, but I'm still a newcomer.
There's the one thing that's not great about this hobby is, in this community, as great of a community as it be, is there are a lot of people that are gatekeepers in it that are like, you don't have this, or you haven't been collecting as long as this, and you don't know this and that. But there's so many more of us that, like I look at it, like, I don't care if you started reading 30 years ago or 30 minutes ago. If you've got a love for it, that's fantastic. Jump in, ask questions like, I don't know what's with my camera there, but ask questions like, I know a lot because I've been reading this stuff for a long time, but like, I just love talking about it. Anybody that wants to ask, hey, what was this? Or, how close is this to it? I'm, a friend I used to have would do that. Like, okay, this movie came out. I want to know what you think of it. And I would say, well, I thought this and this, and like, why? And I'm like, well, because, this came from this story and this, and, it's just, it's fun to talk about. So
it is. It is.
Maybe you ignite that love in someone else, to go do it too. So,
100%.
the people that want to say, oh, you haven't been doing it long enough for this or that, like, go take your shoes off and go kick rocks.
Exactly. And you are 100% right when it comes to the gatekeepers in this community, in this hobby, because it is, when I first got back into it, I'd be on those Facebook pages, comic book Facebook pages, and I'd ask a dumb question, and dude, they attack you. Like, how dare you be ignorant? And I'm like, oh, you know what? You're right. I'm sorry. I don't like this hobby. Never, it's like, what do you want from me? And just because I'm not. But then there's a lot of really good people too. Don't get me wrong. They're vastly outnumber the jerks.
Yes.
But the amount of, like you said, gatekeepers and negative people who laugh at you or make fun of people for asking them questions is a lot higher than I would think it would be from a group of people who were probably nerds and bullied in high school.
Yeah. Well, it's like, oh, I have this power now. Like, for a hobby that, is not as popular as it once was, you shouldn't be pushing people away from it. You should be doing everything you can to draw people into it.
And people who say, oh, you're just a fan because of the movies. Like, well, no, there's
nothing wrong with that.
Well,
if that's what gets you into, how many of us were kids that got into comics because
the cartoons or the X-Men cartoon? Yeah.
There's nothing different.
Or the Saturday morning cartoon X-Men series.
Or like I used to watch the Lou Ferrigno, Bill Bixby Hulk show when I was a kid. Like, there's nothing different.
But you're right.
There's nothing different from watching a cartoon or TV show and having that get you interested in comics than watching a movie and getting interested in it.
Yeah. It's almost like they would rather the comic book hobby die than for them to come out and have people become fans of it because they like Chris Hemsworth's Thor. It's like, really? So you would rather this new generation, because people aren't really collecting comic books anymore. The young people are not. So the only reason any of this is popular at all anymore is because of the MCU and the, I guess, DCU or whatever you would call it. When I say with the mainstream, popular with mainstream. And like, if those things didn't exist, yeah, probably our comic books would be a lot cheaper right now. There's no doubt. But, the comic book industry before these movies came out was hanging by a thread. You know that. And
yeah, I lived through that in the 90s with the whole speculator boom where they were like, oh, first issue, there was the gimmick covers and the first issues and the first appearances, and it was like you made the video the other day about I'm retiring the Darkhawk #1 9.8, but it was
right there.
yeah, which what, that's a cool book because Darkhawk was a fun character when that came out. I don't have a complete run of Darkhawk. I've got maybe a third of it, but I read Darkhawk off and on when it came out, and and sleep
all right.
and some of these, and you're like, yeah, this was a cool book. He pop up in Spider-Man or New Warriors, and but it was the speculator boom where then these guys are going out and they're buying 50 or 100 copies of one issue, and they're like, I'm just going to put this in a box, and 5 years from now this is going to be worth so much money.
And then, I can see why that might piss a lot of people off, and that part I do agree with the people going out there, and a brand new comic book will come out and they get to their comic book store an hour late and somebody bought 30 copies and it's all gone. That part I can totally understand pissing people off.
Because I just saw that with that Doom comic that just came out, and it's blowing up. And some guy was on one of these boards, and some people were asking, rightly so, and I don't know why. Like, why is this book blowing up? Like, it's nothing significant about it.
Maybe it's been so long since a Doom series has come out, maybe,
it's or maybe just a one shot though. And one guy posted on there, he's like, I don't know, but I bought all the copies that were left in my shop, and before I even got home, I had 5 of them sold. And someone's like, people like you are what's problem with the industry.
That's that part is true. And in that case, in that scenario, the gatekeepers are not wrong. But in the other scenarios, they kind of are. But yeah, in that scenario, they're not wrong. And that pisses me off. And you'd think a lot of LCSs put a stop to that sometimes.
Yeah,
but a lot of them don't. They just want to sell it. They just want to get rid of the books, and I don't blame them.
I got Ultimate Spider-Man 1, the one that just came out, because I just wanted to read it. And I had it on my pull, and I had no ideas.
Right.
I was like, I never had an inkling this book was going to blow up because it was hyped for so long. It was hyped and had this big crew, creative team on it. Like, all right, I just wanted to read it, and then it came out. I'm like, all right, this
can't go wrong with some Hickman action.
Yeah, if I had, if I came across one of those books, one of those new ones, and it blew up, and I'm like, oh, there's a bunch of copies left at the LCS. Like, all right, I'll pick up the copy for me.
Maybe
I'll pick up one extra one because whatever. But I'm not going to go pick up all 5 copies. I'm going to leave them there for there's this channel I like called Secret Galaxy where he collects toys and stuff, and he goes has a little saying where he goes, all right, remember leave one for the next guy.
Yeah, and that's a good way to be for sure.
Yeah,
sure.
So you talked about, once you got back into it and you're doing all this and you're watching these different channels. And as anyone that watches CodeX know, the one show that you're consistently on is the Slab Show with Sal and Tim. So what was it that got you interested in, once you started collecting again, that got you interested in graded comics?
I think I was intrigued at first because I had never seen it before.
Mm-hmm.
When I first saw it, I was like, what is this? I want one. I want something in a hard plastic shell that I could never read again. And
what they call it, the people that don't like them call them the plastic coffins.
Right. But I kept seeing them pop up and pop up and pop up. And then I would go to, I started going to local comic book stores here, and here where I live, we have a ton of them. We're very lucky. Tim and I, we've got like 8 or 9 to choose from. And Knoxville,
that McKay's place looks awesome. I'd love
and that's not even including
somewhere like that.
I'm talking about true LCSs around here. I mean, it's nuts. And Knoxville's not that big. It's 150,000 people, 200. It's a medium-sized city, but we've got like 8 or 9 comic book stores. I'm not kidding. Anyways, so I would go to these places and I would see slabs like, ooh, cool. And I would hold it and like, man, that's really neat. I want one.
Yeah.
But then I would look at the price and like, maybe not. But then that's when I dug through and found my dad's stuff. And I'm like, you know what? These books deserve to be encapsulated and preserved. And because those are going to be hand-me-down books. Those are 100% going to one of my kids. 100%. At least those 2. The other stuff, they can do whatever they want, but those 2, they're going, those 2 for sure. I'm going to have a note on them. Do not sell. Keep for next generation. But anyways, so I went to a local comic book store and I had them send those 2 off. And I thought it was the coolest thing ever that I was now part of. I was a real boy. Right. I've got, I'm a big boy now. And, of course, that was back whenever it took a year to get things back.
Yeah.
And, I was like, man, that's a long time. And, he's going to have these books forever and I'm not going to know their status and everything. So I was like, you know what? So
you get that worry that they're going to go missing or something.
Yeah. Cause
they're going to get lost somewhere. And
I've never done it before. And I mean, this comic book store owner guy, he's a great guy. But we're not buddies, so I'm like,
yeah.
Okay. So then I went and I came home
what
that
if he goes
day.
out of business before I get these back?
Right. Which actually was interesting, which I'll touch on in a second. He didn't go out of business, but he had to move his business to another address. So that worried. I was like, oh, I got stressed out. Like, anyways. So I went home directly and I went on the CGC website and I looked and created a membership and paid blah, 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 blah. Learned how to submit, watched videos on how to ship. And I was like, ooh, I got some other cool books that I'd like to send and maybe some this. And from there, it just became kind of, I don't know what Sal's excuse is, but mine is like, most of the books that I've got encapsulated, other than the big boys, I've got doubles and triples of, like that Venom #1 right there. I've got like 3 of those, so me encapsulating that does not prevent me from reading the book again. So that excuse is out the window.
Mm-hmm.
But it just became like really cool. And then I guess I kind of got addicted to see what kind of grade I can get. And that's not really a great way to be. I get that. But that did start to happen with me. I started to be like a 9.8 or bust type guy. Not so much anymore, but I started to become that there for a while. Where
that picture that Tim sent.
Oh yeah,
Al thought he had the book, and it was like, oh, it's direct edition, and then look at it, it's like or thought it was newsstand.
It went from $1,000 book to $100 book. I was like,
and you were like,
yeah. But yeah, so, and it just became one of those things where and then I became part of this channel and I loved doing that. And that just became kind of, I won't say my niche for sure, but I mean, it's one of those things that I really love doing. I love Raw too. There's something to be said about Raw. And I have 95% of my books are Raw. I've got 150 or so slabs, but I've got the rest of my stuff is Raw, and it will remain that way. I'm not sitting out here grading stuff that's stupid, necessarily. I did a couple times when I first started grading, and I still got those sitting over there, and I can't do anything with them. But that's kind of what happened. It was just a bug I caught randomly from watching YouTube, and I still have the bug, and I love it. It's so fun. It's almost a miniature version of Thrill of the Hunt when you get that grade back and you're like, ooh, yeah. I knew it. It's not about value necessarily for me. Don't get me wrong. It's nice,
Or that Wolverine that you got back and you were like, this is bullshit.
Dude, that book was nicer than the direct. And the direct came back at 9.6. And so I did look. For those of you who saw my unboxing, I was going to do a follow-up, but I didn't. So here's the quick follow-up. I inspected the hell out of that book. I went and looked at the grader's notes, and it said there was some kind of bend. I'm like, what? And I went and I found it, and it was a color breaking bend on the back that was not there, by the way. It was not there when I sent it in. So, but like an idiot, I still don't take pictures before I send stuff in. That's a lesson learned on my end. And yep, sure enough, there was damage to the book. That book, without that damage, I would have bet real money that would have been a 9.8. I was so upset. But anyways, whatever. But yeah.
You know what? It's not even worth having in your house now. You just send it here, and I'll dispose of it for you.
I know. You know what? I think trash day's tomorrow. I'm probably just going to throw it out. Yeah. It's
just
beneath
dump it in
me.
the recycling.
It's a 9.0 is beneath me.
And you know what? It's funny you say that. That's my buddy, one of my best friends, Dunk. That's how he got interested in comics when he was a kid. His dad or his stepdad, he told me, I asked him once how he got into it, said he was a trash man. And he came home from work one day with a box of comics and was like, here you go. Somebody threw these out. There was a box of like Thor comics and a bunch of stuff. And he's like,
nice.
Oh, this is cool. And that's, so you never know.
Dude,
you never know how
happens. It happens in the strangest places. It really does. I've heard some strange ones too. And it's like, good for you, man. That's awesome.
So you know what? Maybe you just got to think of it this way: the box of comics that your mom, that everybody says, "Oh, we had."
It created a
mom
collector's.
Dumps the comics out. There's somebody somewhere that the trash guy said, "I bet my kid would like to look at these," and took them and gave them to their kid.
You know what? I don't care. I'm still mad. It was some good stuff, but no, it was fine. My mom.
I mean, there's so many people that have that story, but that's one reason these books are worth what they are, because so many people have that story. If everybody still had that stuff the way they did, these prices wouldn't be what they are now.
That's true, and that applies to old G.I. Joes, old Star Wars, all these vintage toys that are out there that people loved in the 80s, because I'm sure you agree, the 80s was the best time to be a kid.
The 80s was the peak of human civilization.
The best toys, the best cartoons, the best movies, the best everything. And it's not just because we grew up there. Other generations agree. And it's just the way it is. But you're right. If people hadn't tossed stuff and things like that, the market would be full of them, and you could just, there'd be no value in them. But that's not always the point, though, is it? The value. It's just having it.
Well, you mentioned Star Wars. You got the Star Wars T-shirt on. How did you decide to come across the moniker of Rebel Scum?
You guys did that.
Oh, we did.
Y'all did that. Which I was like, dude, that's awesome. So it was the first show that I was ever a part of. It was on one of the After Darks that I came on as a guest. And I was you actually bought me another shirt. I was wearing the shirt.
Oh, yeah.
That said Rebel Scum on it that night. You actually bought me another shirt that was almost identical to that, which was perfect timing because I had just ripped that shirt. So you actually replaced that shirt with almost the identical shirt. Anyways,
nice.
So I've got it again. Yeah, thanks to you, I have that shirt still, just in a different form. But anyways,
I had to ask Tim what your shirt size was. We do a Secret Santa at CodeX, and I got Wes's name, and I immediately knew. I was like, I'm going to get a Rebel Scum shirt.
Yep.
And I had to ask Tim, Tim, what size shirt does he wear? You can't judge that seeing someone on a little screen on your computer.
Yeah, so it's hard.
I sent it, I was like,
I got Kristen, and I was like, good Lord. I mean, I know she likes all kinds of horror stuff and things like that, so I got her that poster. But yeah, so that's how I got the moniker, because I happened to have a Star Wars shirt on there that said Rebel Scum under it. And then Tim or whoever, maybe it was Sal, like, oh, Rebel Scum, huh? That's going to be, I was like, actually, that's kind of cool. And I love Star Wars anyways. So sure. And my favorite, or my favorite, college team is the Ole Miss Rebels. So it's like, perfect. It's all around perfect for me. So
I guess it's a good thing you didn't go on the show wearing a Gem in the Holograms t-shirt.
Oh my God. Jim, but I'd probably still be okay with that. That'd be fine. But no, I thought it was really cool. But yeah. And so now I love it. And now this is a good segue to say I am new to the Instagram world. And if any of you want to follow me on Instagram, I have created an Instagram account called Rebel Scum _comics. If you would like to join, I would love to have you. I'm going to start posting cool videos and cool pictures of comic books I come across, maybe sneak peeks of CGC unboxings, things like that. There's not any much on there yet. There's only like 1 or 2 things on there now, but trust me.
There's the Dark Hawk video.
Oh,
You
yeah.
need to make sure you pin that to the top of your page so that even though when you post other stuff, that'll stay at the top.
Yeah, I love that video. But yeah, so I'll have that on there. So yeah, if you guys want to give me a follow, I would appreciate it. I am now in the social media world. It's so exciting. So
now we just got to get Gary one.
Oh God, good luck. Good luck.
So you had your time away from the hobby. You had your walkabout years. You came back to it. You asked your questions, started buying again. You started getting books graded. When you started getting into comics again and started buying new ones, what were the titles that you were buying that the newer books that you started buying? What is it you're reading now?
Right. So well, what I'm reading right now is actually the Blood Hunt. That is fantastic, by the way. I don't know if you've been reading that series. It's great.
I've had the past couple of weeks. I've had to do so much reading for stuff for the podcast.
Yeah.
For like the Grimjack show and some other stuff that I'm behind on. On my polls by about 3 weeks.
It's fantastic. I don't think you really need to go get all the little offshoots or whatever. I mean, I bought a couple of those just to kind of verify some things, but I think really
the only one
that
I've bought is Union Jack, and that's just because I'm a big fan of the Union Jack character, and it's few and far between when I get anything with him. So yeah. I'm like,
there's a Union Jack offshoot of Blood Hunt.
It's called Union Jack the Ripper Blood Hunt.
Oh, see, I didn't see that at the comic book store I went to. So yeah, that's one.
Cool. One of the books that I used to like buying back issues of at these antique stores and stuff as a kid was the Invaders. I used to love the Invaders and I still do. And Union Jack was in there, and he's just got one of the most badass costumes in comics.
He does have a cool costume.
And I like the fact that the current Union Jack is, a working class guy, and he's kind of a vampire hunter, so it makes sense that he would have him in this. So when I saw Union Jack, I'm definitely getting that. But anyways, you're Blood Hunt.
You're good. So so I'm currently reading that one, but that's only 2 issues in. The new Green Lantern run is pretty good. I think I'm like 2 issues behind on that one, 2 maybe 3, 2. So, but there's only 6 total right now, so I'm not deep into that one. The Ultimate Spider-Man one, or the Ultimate Spider-Man run, I'm reading that one. I think I'm missing the last issue. I got to go grab it. So, but when I got back into it, as a new guy into the comic books into the comic book collecting that you used to collect, you walk into a LCS and you're like, what? What am I doing? Where do I start?
Yeah.
And I walked up to one of the store owners. His name was Mike. His store is no longer there, unfortunately. Well, he moved to a different part of town. I just don't go there much anymore. And I walked up to him. I was like, hey, man, I built a little bit of a rapport with him. He was a cool guy. And I said, hey, I'm new. I want to start getting back into reading stuff. And he's like, well, I can't really help you on the new stuff. He's like, because I'm still, I still read the old stuff. I love it. He doesn't read a lot of new stuff. And I was like, okay. I was like, well, I do need to catch up. So really, when I first came back into it, I focused on going back in time and reading and getting trade paperbacks of things. I started working. That's when I first started working on my Green Lantern run. Was right around then. The one that was the 3rd series, the one with Rainer and series 3, from 1991 or
the one where Hal went crazy, killed the Thor, Parallax. Kyle was in 50, and then in 51, Kyle is the new Green Lantern. Yeah.
Yes. The last. So that's when I started working on that run. It's not a modern comic, or it's not a recent comic by any means. But I started picking up trades, right? And I wanted to also get into DC because I'd also kind of become part of this channel, and I wanted to be able to hold a conversation with you guys. And I started to realize DC's actually got really cool stories.
Yeah.
So I started buying trades. There's some there. I've got a stack over there that I've been reading. I reread like Excalibur. I reread. I started reading a lot of.
Series.
Yeah, I started reading a lot of the old Batman, like the Dark Knight stuff. All kinds of stuff. And that's really what I've been doing still to this day. Yeah, I'm reading a couple runs that are currently out, which is why I have a hard time when you guys do the Codex Awards. I'm like, I'm still reading old stuff. I'm reading a couple series right now, but nothing major. Or I'll read a few. I'm like, I really like the old stuff better. So I'll go back and I'll read the trades or things like that. I'm saving up for some omnibuses. Those are so expensive. Expensive.
Good ones to get that I tell people, and that you can get pretty cheap is when Marvel and DC used to, and I forget which one's called which, but they were basically like the essentials, where it would be a big, thick book like this, and it would have like 30, 40, 50 issues in it. And they would print it in black and white, which is how they made it so cheap. But, but you could read.
Still get the stories, still get the feel for it. Yeah.
Yeah, you could read, like, you could get cheap a lot of these old issues and just read, have 30, 40 issues in a row and some annuals and stuff in there. And hey, guess what? Doubles as a coloring book.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Good practice for you, for sure. You could just do it for yourself,
Yeah, like you're right. Stuff like these omnibuses, graphic novels are in a somewhat affordable way, to get these older books.
Because
all these reprints that they do now.
Yeah. And I loved Excalibur, so that's what I'm working on now. I've got series 1 and 2 of, what is this series called here? Let me find it. Of course, I reread like all the Infinity Gauntlet stuff. I did all that, but I don't guess I have it over here. Might be over there. Anyways, it collects like the first 15 issues, and then I've got the second one that collects like 16 through 20 something or 30 or whatever. I'm working on that again, and that's kind of what I'm doing now. I just read the older stuff, the stuff that I remember, even and stuff that you guys are always talking about, how cool that was. Like, man, I got to do that. Like I Tim let me borrow, what was it?
Camelot 3000.
Camelot 3000. How'd you know?
Because he said something about it a couple weeks ago that he let you borrow it.
Yeah, he let me borrow it, and I'm about halfway through, and it's pretty cool. I really like it. Never really thought I would ever read that book or that series, and it's great. It's really good. So that's kind of where my reading is right now, is catching up to you guys, doing my best. And then eventually I'll start reading some more recent stuff. And I do have, like I said, a couple that I do read right now that I am reading.
So you mentioned buying collections. So what was it that got you? And we've talked about this before. You said you're buying collections pretty much. You've made it where the hobby can fund itself. So you buy collections. You have a stand set up where you buy the collection. You're like, all right, I'm going to keep this, and this, and this stuff all goes to your booth that you have.
And sell. Cons, we started doing cons too.
And cons, yeah. So what was it that gave you the idea? Like, hey, I'm going to go out and buy this collection. I'm going to keep some. I'm going to flip the rest, and I'm going to take that money and use it for another one, and then just keep building and building.
100% YouTube. When I first got back into thinking about becoming a collector again, I started going down the rabbit hole of YouTube, like I said before. And a lot of these guys would say the term, make the collection pay for itself. And at the time when I came back in, it was just prior and during the comic boom. So things were so expensive. I was like, dude, I don't want to spend that kind of money on that stuff. I don't have that kind of money to just throw around. So I thought that would be a good idea. So I would look on Marketplace and this, that, and the other. And I'm like, but I really didn't. I was still kind of getting back into it. So I didn't trust myself to know the value of stuff in what I should spend or could spend. And then a buddy of mine at work randomly said, hey, I saw you watching it. I was watching a YouTube thing at work. Probably shouldn't have been, but I was. And he goes, "You like comic books?" I'm like, "No." I was just accidentally watching this. He's like, "No, do you?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm starting to."
I'm just
He's
trying
like,
to
"Well,
find a gift for my kid, guys.
yeah, whatever." But he's like, "Well, I've got a whole bunch of them that I'm looking to sell. Would you want to buy them?" I'm like, "Sure." So I went and looked, and sure enough, he had a nice collection. It was a lot of 90s Superman stuff, but there was the whole Secret Wars run in there to include number 8.
Nice.
There was some. There was like the entire run of like the 70s Godzilla.
Wow.
And in fantastic shape. That you've probably seen me show that that ASM 256 or 257, which is not a key, but it is that 30-cent price variant that was in there. And a bunch of stuff in there. And I probably overpaid. I think I paid like $800 total. I mean, it was a lot of books, but I've just mentioned a few. But I overpaid. I think now by the standards I buy stuff now in. But that was like so cool. I had all these cool comic books in here I could go back in time with and look at and cool. And now look at this. And and that was the first time I ever bought one. And I thought to myself, okay, that's step one. Step two is now maybe try to make a buck to where I can afford the stuff that I want or buy more collections. And that's just kind of where it began. But it was by seeing other YouTube channels say that statement, making your collection pay for itself is the most stress-free way to buy these big books. And that 100% is true. Not a single big book that I own, not one, have I paid retail for. Not one.
Nice.
Not one. And that's not to boast that at all. That's due to a lot of due diligence and a lot of patience and a lot of heartache and a lot of misfires and a lot of oops, I shouldn't have bought that. But overall, every one of my books that have any kind of real value in them have been bought in collections. 100%.
I mean, I've got some big, I don't know how
now,
big
you got some good keys, man.
A big book, but yeah, all of them, there's very few of them that I bought that I paid a lot of money for. Like even these Teen Titans ones.
Yeah.
That's
a great book.
I bought a run of Teen Titans. Like it was issues 1 to like 60 or 70, something like that. Mm-hmm. I think I bought it for like $40 or $50 for like the whole thing, and that's a lot of the stuff I have was bought before the books really blew up in value. Like the first Iron Fist run, I've got the complete run of that with the first Sabretooth.
Nice.
So, yeah,
I don't have that book. I don't have
the
I have the second appearance,
or like Nova, the Human Rocket. I got the complete run of that, but it's the stuff that I bought before, like you said, there was this boom. It's stuff that I bought like 15 years ago, where I was just like, hey, you know what, man, I like Iron Fist, and yeah, hey, cool, I can get all these. Like, oh, I like Nova, because I like New Warriors. I'm going to get all these, and now they're worth so much more than they are, or than they were then. But yeah, you're
like that
right.
That first Power Girl was found in a whole run that I bought.
Yeah, that one I'm jealous of. That's a nice one.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, it's not a great grade, but it's cool. I think it's only like a 6.0, which is fine.
Hey, you know what? I've said on here, I've said on the channel multiple times, and would continue to say it. I would rather have a low grade
versus no grade
and have it in my collection than not have it at all.
Yeah,
and that's what I look for in some of these big keys, like for New Mutants 98. I'm not trying to find a copy of that because I'm such a huge Deadpool fan. Like, I'm a New Mutants fan, and I got to have that complete run, and that's the hole that
that's the one that's going to cost you. That's the one that's going to cost you.
So that's
unless
why I
you luck into it.
Yeah,
I've gotten lucky with some of these collections. Like I said, I've gotten very unlucky before where I bought one. I'm like, ooh, that was a bust. Don't get me wrong, but there's a few in there. It's like son of a gun. But that one was actually my New Mutants was a trade. That wasn't bought in a collection. That was a trade. But I traded him stuff that I had gotten from collections, right? So it's kind of the same thing.
So throughout all this time, when you started reading as a kid, took your break, started again, all the way up till now. How would you say that being a comic fan and collecting comics has impacted your life?
Well, when I was a kid, I mean that was my group of that was my people. That was the group of people um that I called my friends, and those were the people that I hung out with. They were like-minded individuals, and you could talk nerd stuff freely and not with no retribution, right? And that kind of thing. So that was nice to be able to just kind of be myself there. You know, obviously every person has different sides of their personality, and I had that one side which was like, dude, yeah, I'm a nerd, and I'm proud of it. And that was always that way. Like even in the army, and I'll give you the short version story of this. When we were on deployment one time, and I walked into some of my soldiers' hooch, or what their area where they slept, and they were in there playing D&D. And when I walked in, they got not scared, but they were like, "Oh crap, what's he gonna do?" And because I had been, and I was no longer really in that world anymore because I'd kind of just left it behind, But you know, I sat down with them and was just enjoying my time with them, and they couldn't believe that I wasn't losing my mind over it, or making fun of them or destroying them over it, and I'm like, guys, I don't do this stuff. I never played D&D, but I appreciate the nerddom, and I think that, that always stayed with me, with like, that side of me was always there. And it was always something, a lot of people are like, oh, I grew, Spider-Man, like what Tim said, Spider-Man was there when he was going through hard times and things like that. That's true. I was always able to escape in my head to fantasy land, and, I could think about what was going on. And, even when I wasn't collecting, I was still kind of a nerd at heart, and, appreciated that kind of stuff. And there's no real, I don't really have a concrete answer for this one, but what I will say is that it was one of those things where I was able to separate myself from the real world to fantasy world more easily than maybe other adults could, and I was able to maybe focus on other cool things. Now I was always still cool, appreciative of pop culture and things like that, old 80s stuff, but.
Like I said,
it's hard. It's hard. That's a hard question. Huh?
Like I said, that was the peak of human civilization.
It was. And, more so now. So like more so now, especially since I've become part of this channel, it's allowed me to meet cool people like you and Tim and Sal and Gary and Jamie and all those guys. And then
myself is cool.
Yeah. I mean, you guys are freaking awesome. And the fact that I'm even on YouTube right now, that's nuts to me. And I think it's the coolest thing in the world, where I get to come and if I hadn't dug my stuff out of the attic that one day, I wouldn't be sitting here in front of you talking comic books and collecting and nerd stuff. And that's the best part of it. The culmination is now for me. Yeah, it was cool growing up, and the friends that I had then are still the friends that I have now. And that was something I'll never trade ever in my life. I wasn't bullied in school necessarily, because I wasn't, but it was definitely a part of me that I hid, I guess, which is shameful to say, but it is. You don't just advertise it when you're 17 years old trying to get girls, Maybe some appreciate it, but most don't.
It wasn't as accepted back then as it is now.
Agreed, 100%. In the 90s, just keep it between you and your friends. Now it's cool to be a nerd, which is fine.
Yeah.
So
now you go.
That was kind of a rambling answer, but yeah.
Yeah, now you go to the Hot Topic at the mall, and there's a wall of comic book and cartoon T-shirts.
Yeah, and people wear them ironically also they wear them seriously.
Yeah.
Who cares? You know, it's cool. And I'm cool with that. You know,
Yeah.
it's kind of like the teenagers now walking around with those, you know, heavy metal t-shirts. I'm like, can you name one song from Thrasher? Can you name one? You know, it's like, come on.
Oh yeah, I see him with the Thrasher t-shirts.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Or Led Zeppelin. Like, really? Name one song.
I just like it's cool design, but I'm like, when was the last time they made an issue of Thrasher? Like, when was the last time that magazine was even a thing?
I know. I mean, it's cool, I guess. I
don't know. Maybe they have
a website
them, now. Everything's a website now, so I don't know.
Well, that's true. Maybe that might be it.
God damn, that makes me sound old as shit.
I just was about to say that. We just both sounded like maybe that's on the interwebs. Let me see here. Put my glasses on.
I'll go put on my Jenko jeans and
yeah.
and my Thrasher t-shirt.
Hey, there's my Instagram again.
Yeah, I left it up there for everyone.
Awesome.
So yeah, everyone check him out on Instagram. Help his page grow. I've started following him, and
heck yeah,
the Darkhawk video is gold.
Yeah. I was like, I gotta start out with something good, and so I posted that one on there. I thought that was funny. So I let it cook on our YouTube channel for a couple weeks, and I was like, now I'll transfer it over. So, but yeah, so.
Well, thank you for taking the time to sit down and talk about comics and your life in comics with me tonight.
I appreciate it, man. This is awesome. I can't wait to see your interview with whoever ends up doing it.
Yeah, I still got to interview Sonny. So, you know, trying to lock down Sonny on something is like trying to herd cats sometimes.
Yeah, his will be interesting. I look forward to seeing his. That'll be a good one. I love his dry humor. I love it.
Yeah,
it's very funny. So, all
right. Well, everyone, check him out on Instagram, and you know, as always, check us out online at where's the thing? Yeah, check us out online at the CodeX Station.
There we are.
And yeah, until next time, catch you by the spinner rack.